Hey everyone, I'm Gaming. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to Monster Analysis. Up for analysis today is Darmith's Bodyguard. Unlike other bodyguards, this creature prefers working in the background. He pulls the string and influences his general with the information provided by his many whisperers. Nothing happens in the Dark Army without Darmith's Bodyguard knowing. Ooh, a supportive, analytical monster that works in the background, I love it. Here we have the monster as a baby, as a teenager, as an adult. As I just mentioned, I love the design, and even more, I love what this monster has to bring into Monster Legends, so we'll get into the skills in a little bit. But before that, you should know that as of the time recording this video, there's a total of 28 fire legendary monsters, and so I'm going to be comparing Darmith's Bodyguard to those monsters. And you should also note that the Nemesis monsters are actually released for the fire element, and typically when I do an analysis that includes Nemesis monsters, they tend to really skew the stats. So just bear that in mind when I'm actually analyzing Darmith's Bodyguard. And so we start off with a power of 3,311. This power is awful. It actually puts him in 23rd place, tied with monsters like Greedy Dragon and Bodyguard. And when you consider that there's only 28 fire legendary monsters, there's only like 3 monsters that have a weaker power than this monster. With all of that being said though, with me really bashing on his power, I should mention that this quite possibly can be one of the strongest fire attackers. I know it doesn't make sense right now, especially because of the power, but it all has to do because of one skill which I will be discussing later on. So just hold off on that for now. As for his life, he has a life of 28,651. This life puts him in 10th place, tied with monsters like Firestorm, Tulukahoo, Raccoon, and Greedy Dragon, so it's a somewhat average life to have as a fire monster. And last but certainly not least, we have a speed of 3,498, thus making Darmith's Bodyguard the fastest monster. Or the fastest fire monster I should say. In terms of every single legendary monster, it's actually still a very good stat. 3,498 is actually the 8th highest stat if we're talking about every single legendary monster ever released up until now. And so while it may be the 8th highest stat, it actually puts him tied for 15th place along with monsters like Baba Yaga, Chrysandre, and Xylo the Faithful. But keep in mind this one when considering every single legendary monster from every single element. So what can I say, his speed set is just so phenomenal. And as for his trait, like many other fire monsters, he is immune to burning. I honestly wish he could have been given something better, but I mean, I guess in the fire element it does somewhat help you out, but at the same time, hardened would have been better, immunity to stun would have been better. They could have just done so much more with this monster. Anyhow, moving on over to the skill, starting off with the ultimate skill, Darmith the Spirit. Heals by 50%, gives precision and triple damage to an ally. And so I understand that Darmith's Bodyguard, according to his description, he's not there to be an attacker, he's here to be supportive. I understand why he has his ultimate skill. I hate that it only targets a single ally. It's nice that it gives triple damage, but it's only to one ally. If it would have been a team skill that maybe did a team heal and a team double damage, I would have been okay with it. But right now, I'm just not really liking it. Triple damage and increased accuracy, obviously whatever monster you use this skill on, your ultimate attack on, they're pretty much guaranteed to wipe out all of the enemy team if you have an AoE. Even if it was like a weaker AoE, like a 30 damage, because then you'd be dealing 90 damage AoE, and it'd have increased accuracy so you wouldn't miss. So yes, in the right circumstance, it can be obviously quite devastating, but overall just personally, I don't really like his ultimate attack. Moving on over to skills group 1, the only skill I want to quickly discuss is Atlantis Ring. Gains immunity to freeze, protection against water, and special attacks to itself. So this is a self skill that gives him special protection, water protection. What this essentially means is that he will receive 50% less damage from water attacks and special attacks. That's awesome that he relieves less damage from water attacks, because as you know, water has an elemental advantage against fire. And furthermore, it gives him special protection, so for those water monsters that have special based attacks, well now you're fully protected. It doesn't matter what attack the enemy water monster does against you, 50% less damage is going to be received. And as an added bonus, you get freeze immunity for 3 turns. So those water monsters won't be able to immobilize you and they'll barely be dealing any damage. So even though you don't have necessarily a high life, it's rather average, against water monsters you definitely have increased survivability. And of course, this is a self skill, and you guys have heard me say multiple times that I love self skills, because having a self skill also means that you're immune to possession, and there's more and more water monsters with possession skills, and not even water monsters. If you look at other elements, earth monsters have Baba Yaga, they'll probably get more in the future. Metal monsters have quite a bit of monsters with possession, and they even have Hackster who can bypass immunity to possession, so self skill would really help you out. In the dark category, it's like full with possession monsters, and we also have Glitch who has corruption that can bypass possession, so self skill can always definitely come in handy. And normally I would say that you would definitely want to run this skill, but I think for Darmith's Bodyguard specifically, I'm not going to be recommending it. It's still a fine skill that you could definitely run if you want to be protected against possession skills, but at the end of the day it's up to you, and I've decided that I wouldn't be running this skill myself. And so with that said, moving on over to skills group 2, Hard Covers, deals heavy fire damage, requires cooldown. This skill deals 50 fire-based damage to a single enemy, it costs 20 in stamina, it has a 1-turn cooldown. It's a pretty vanilla skill. I'm not going to be recommending it even if you were to choose to run Darmith's Bodyguard as an attacker. Atlantis Pact is next, deals moderate special damage to one enemy, gives immunity to freeze and water protection to your allied team, requires cooldown. So this skill deals 30 special base damage to a single enemy. Now that's rather weak, especially combined with his weak power. It costs 31 stamina, has a 3-turn cooldown, and your whole team gets freeze immunity and water protection. And finally, we have a bodyguard that lives up to his name, or to his purpose. He's supposed to be Darmith's bodyguard. He's supposed to protect Darmith from his main enemies, which, because they have an elemental advantage, would be water monsters. So not only do you protect against freeze, which is what water monsters tend to immobilize you with, Darmith's bodyguard also protects against that water damage, which again, that elemental advantage, it's perfect. But even more so, what I like about Atlantis Pact, going back to Darmith's bodyguard, fast speed of 3498, there's actually no water monster currently in the game that has a faster base speed than Darmith's bodyguard. The two closest monsters are Frostwrath and Varadianoi, which have a speed of 3476. And so on an equal playing field, if we take level 100s with 100s, 105s with 105s, we assume the exact same runes, you're always going to be going before the enemy water monster, which means you can always grant that freeze immunity right off the bats. And actually, the only two monsters that have an AoE freeze skill that are faster than Darmith's bodyguard are Krampus and Hydrotilla the Boltcaster. Now the Boltcaster, he's a nemesis monster, so you probably won't be running into him a lot. But as for Krampus, he's easily obtainable by free-to-play players, so he's a monster you definitely will counter. So if you ever have a speed advantage against the enemy Krampus, then once again you can start off with Atlantis Pact and the enemy Krampus becomes rather useless. His AoE freeze or his single freeze, it's not going to be working against your team. And so it pretty much goes without saying that this is the must-have skill for Darmith's bodyguard. Next up we have Dragon Souls, deals moderate fire damage, gives damage boost and precision to all allies, requires cooldown. So this skill deals 45 fire-based damage to a single enemy monster, it costs 31 stamina, has a 2-turn cooldown, and you allow your whole entire team to deal 50% more damage, as well as give them increased accuracy so their attacks won't be missing. And so what can I say other than this is a really awesome supportive skill. It helps your attacker monster in your team to deal more damage and at the same time guarantee that they don't miss. Another skill I would definitely recommend. And so we're done with skills group 2, on to skills group 3, Face and Buck. Adds 50% of stamina and stamina regeneration to an ally, adds stamina regeneration to itself, requires cooldown. So here we have a skill that targets a single ally, it costs 31 stamina, has a 3-turn cooldown, and you give yourself energy regeneration at the same time that you're recovering 50% of stamina from one of your allies and giving them regeneration. So 2 of your monsters get regeneration, Darmith's bodyguard is included, and one of your allies also gets an energy boost. And a skill like Face and Book is another pretty awesome supportive skill. It can ensure that your monster doesn't have to recharge, you don't need to waste time recharging with them. It also makes it so Darmith's bodyguard also won't have to waste a turn recharging. Let's just say that you were going to recharge with Darmith's bodyguard, or let's say that one of your teammates was going to recharge. Well, instead of recharging with either monster, well, you just use Face and Book and you let the energy regeneration recharge, that way you're free to attack. And so I do really like this supportive move, and I think it can be used on a monster. It's going to go up to preference really, because I'm not going to be recommending it myself, but again, I really do like it. Next up we have Special Lizard. So this skill deals moderate fire damage to all enemies, gives protection against special attacks, and removes all negative status effects to allied team, requires cooldown. So here we have yet another amazing skill. So it deals 35 damage to all of the enemy monsters, and it's a single enemy, but I'm going to go based off the description. So I'm assuming it's an AoE fire-based attack. It costs 31 stamina, has a 4-turn cooldown. And this skill does two things. First of all, it removes all negative debuffs you may have. So if you have some sort of DLT like burning, ignition, whatever it may be, if some of your monsters were possessed or stunned or whatever, it completely gets rid of that. Daze, blind, all those negative effects, right? But on top of all of that, you also give special protection to your whole entire team, which means special attacks are 50% less effective. And so once again, it goes back to what I said earlier. Darmith's bodyguard is finally a monster that truly lives up to his purpose. He's actually a bodyguard. He's protecting not only from water attacks, he can also protect from special attacks, and that's to your whole entire team. And so Darmith's bodyguard is crazy fast, and he doesn't have any immobilizing skills, and he does have anti-freeze thanks to his previous skill. But one thing he can do is that you can take damage, but just reduce the amount of damage you take thanks to Special Lizard and Atlas Pact if you're going up against water monsters. And so what I'm trying to say is that even though he can't deny the enemy monsters like what you typically want to do in a team, you want to run a monster with an AoE deny skill, you can still have this monster go first or second and just have him protect your team from taking that much damage. And so this is another skill I would personally recommend. And now we move into a rather interesting skill, Fire Curse. Deals moderate fire damage to all enemies, gives fire weakness to all enemies, requires cooldown. Here we have a skill that deals 40 fire-based damage to all of the enemy monsters. It only costs 28 stamina, it has a 3-turn cooldown, and it applies fire weakness. And so fire weakness makes it so the enemies receive 80% more damage from fire attacks. And so here's the thing about Fire Curse. Normally, if you're running a supportive build, you probably wouldn't want to run it, it'd be very situational. It would only come in handy if you had another fire monster in your team, in which case I could easily say don't run this skill, run Face and Book instead. But the odd thing about Fire Curse is that it actually applies the fire weakness before the damage. So don't think of it like you're dealing 40 damage and then the monsters become weak to fire. Rather, it's the enemies become weak to fire attacks and then you deal the 40 fire based damage, which is insane because your 40 damage is going to be 80% more effective. So essentially you can think of Fire Cursed as a 72 damage AoE. And because even if you're facing against a fire monster, they're gonna have fire weakness, you're gonna be dealing 72 damage against the fire monster also. And so if you're still not convinced, that's amazing, and I imagine it's probably because of this monster's power. 3311, it doesn't really seem that convincing. So what if this monster has a powerful AoE if he has a lousy power? Well, I actually went ahead and calculated what the damage output would do, and let me just give you guys an example. There's a fire monster by the name of Radar that has a power of 3850. This is by far the strongest monster in the whole entire game in terms of power. Radar has a skill called Mad Ride, which is a 45 fire based AoE. Assuming no runes, if we combine Radar's power with Mad Ride, he would deal 7276 damage against any non-fire monster. Against a fire monster, that number would obviously be reduced in half, so only around 3k damage. But if we combine Darmith's Bodyguard's power of 3311 with Fire Cursed, he would actually deal 10,012 damage to all of the enemy monsters, regardless of their element. So even if it's a fire monster, it's 10,012. And so even though the two monsters have a 500 point difference in terms of power, Darmith's Bodyguard is superior in terms of damage output just because of the fact that you're applying fire weakness before doing the damage. So this is very similar to the Sentinel. If you guys have ever played around with the Sentinel, his ultimate attack actually applies magnetism before doing the actual damage. So rather than just being a 65 damage AoE, it's more of a 97-98 damage AoE, just because it's magnetized first, then damage output. And so going back to Darmith's Bodyguard, this is why I'm saying this monster can potentially be run as an attacker. I know just looking at the power it doesn't seem like it, but he definitely has what it takes just because of the way Fire Cursed works. If for some reason they were to change it in the future, then in that case I would say there's no reason to run Fire Cursed other than the possibility of you setting up for a fire attacker, so maybe in an all fire war or just anywhere where you have two fire monsters, but that's just if they were to change it in the future. For the time being, I would say run Fire Cursed, run Special Lizard, run Dragon Souls, and run Atlantis Pact. And so if Special Lizard is actually an AoE, which I'm pretty sure it is, after you do Fire Cursed, if you do a Special Lizard, that's pretty much guaranteed to wipe out all of the enemy monsters. And so that's just one potential combo you can do if you choose to run Darmith's Bodyguard as an attacker. If however you choose to run Darmith's Bodyguard as a supportive monster, I would recommend 3 speed runes. And the only reason I would recommend 3 speed runes is for that freeze immunity. So the only time you would want to use Darmith's Bodyguard would be against a water monster or just any monster that can freeze you, and they only have freeze skills. If it's like a cabin fish that can stun or freeze, it wouldn't be that great of an idea to bring Darmith's Bodyguard, because then there still exists that possibility to get denied. So only run 3 speedruns on Darmith's Bodyguard as an anti-freeze monster. And if being frozen doesn't really bother you, let's say you have really good runes on your deny monster and you can immobilize them before they immobilize you, then in those situations he's just your regular supportive monster, which you would give him 3 team speed runes or some combination of team runes or single runes just to help your deny monster go first, and then you would just utilize the skills like water protection if you're facing water monsters, special protection against all legendaries, remove debuffs, that's also really good, or Dragon Souls, which gives a damage boost and increased accuracy to your whole entire team. And actually, if you were to run this monster as just your usual supportive monster, just make sure to make him faster than your attacker, just so that your attacker can really benefit from Dragon Souls. And if you're going the attacker route with Darmith's Bodyguard, well, you can do 2 strength runes and a speed rune, or quite honestly, if you have a really high level rune, you could probably just do that high level rune and then a speed rune and a team speed, or 2 speed runes. Although I really think the speed and team speed would probably help you out a lot more, just because your base speed is so fast, whatever enemy fire monster you're facing, you're probably going to be going before them anyway. And so that's my recommendation. With all that being said, that is going to conclude this analysis on Darmith's Bodyguard. Now I want to hear from all of you guys. What do you think about this monster? Are you shocked that even though he has a low base power, he has the potential to be one of the strongest fire hitters in the whole entire game? I mean, if we just look at AoE damage output, he jumps from 23rd place to 1st place, so that's pretty phenomenal in my opinion. And so yeah, what do you guys think of Darmith's Bodyguard? How do you think he relates to the other fire monsters? Do you like him? Do you dislike him? If you do have this monster, are you going to run him as an attacker or as an anti-freeze monster? Let me know in the comments below. Best of luck to everyone on your Monster Legends adventures, and like always, remember to dream big and pursue your passions.